If you are a man over 60 and you believe it's normal to wake up 3 or 4 times a night just to urinate, let me tell you something you may not want to hear. That belief is not only wrong, it is dangerous. Night after night of broken sleep, rushing to the bathroom with urgency, or standing over the toilet with a weak trickle are not harmless inconveniences of aging. They are warnings, clear signals that your prostate is quietly enlarging, and ignoring them could cost you your comfort, your confidence, and even your health. My name is Dr. Mohit Kara. I am a physician and men's health specialist with over 30 years of experience treating prostate enlargement, erectile dysfunction, low testosterone, and the many conditions that affect men as they age. I have helped thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who once felt defeated find relief and reclaim their lives. I want you to know that you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not beyond hope. Most men are told that their prostate grows simply because they are getting older. But here is the truth. Age is not the only factor. The real problem is that far too many men dismiss the early signs, the signals their body is desperately sending until it is too late. And the worst sign of all, the one most often ignored, is waking repeatedly through the night just to pee. Today, I will show you the 10 most dangerous signs that your prostate is enlarging and why you must take them seriously. Because recognizing these signs is the first step to reclaiming your sleep, your strength, and your manhood. And stay with me until the end, because I will also share a simple 15-second nightly ritual my patients use to calm their prostate, restore their energy, and finally sleep through the night again. Before we begin, if you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another vital prostate health tip designed for men over 60. And if this message resonates with you, type 1 in the comments below. If it doesn't, type 0 so I can better understand how to serve you. Now let's begin with the very first and most common warning sign. If you find yourself waking up night after night, 2, 3, even 4 times just to urinate, this is not simply aging. This constant disruption is your prostate's first and clearest cry for attention. 1. Waking up, multiple times at night, Nocturia. When I sit across from men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, there is one story I hear over and over again. They tell me, "Doc, I wake up at 1 o'clock, then 3, then 5, and every time it's just a small trickle." Some laugh it off as a nuisance. Others sigh in frustration, rubbing their tired eyes, and many quietly admit that it makes them feel old, weak, or even embarrassed. But let me be very clear. Waking up several times a night to urinate is not a normal part of aging. It is one of the earliest and most important signs that your prostate is beginning to enlarge. Here's what's really happening. Your prostate sits like a small, walnut-shaped gland right below your bladder, wrapped around your urethra. When it starts to swell, even just a little, it presses against your bladder and changes how it holds and empties urine. Instead of resting peacefully through the night, your bladder becomes jumpy and irritable. It sends signals to your brain saying, "Empty me now," even when there's hardly anything there. That's why you stumble to the bathroom multiple times only to pass a few drops. It isn't because you drank too much water. It isn't because you're simply getting older. It's because your prostate is quietly demanding attention. I'll never forget a patient named Robert, 72 years old, who told me he hadn't had a full night of sleep in nearly a decade. He thought it was his destiny, that every older man had to endure those endless bathroom trips. But when we addressed his prostate health, within weeks he slept 6, sometimes even 7 hours straight. He came into my office with tears in his eyes and said, "Doc, I feel like I got my life back." That's the power of recognizing this sign before it robs you of years of rest, energy, and joy. Think for a moment about what broken sleep does to your body. It wears down your immune system, clouds your memory, steals your energy, and even raises your risk of heart disease and stroke. And yet so many men brush it aside, telling themselves it's just part of aging. Gentlemen, it is not. Waking up repeatedly through the night is your prostate's first cry for help, and ignoring it only allows the problem to grow louder. Now, if this sign sounds familiar, you may already be experiencing the next one as well. Because when your prostate swells, it doesn't just disturb your sleep, It starts to change the very way your urine flows, and that shift is something you cannot afford to overlook. 2. A weak or slow urine stream. One of the most common complaints I hear from men sitting in my office is that their urine stream just isn't what it used to be. They lean forward, lower their voices, and confess with a mix of frustration and embarrassment, "Doc, it feels like I've lost the power. It takes forever to go, and even then, it's barely a trickle." Some tell me they find themselves standing over the toilet for long minutes, straining, pushing, waiting for the flow to begin, only to watch it dribble out weakly. Others admit that it makes them anxious in public restrooms, afraid of the looks they might get from strangers when they take too long. It's not only inconvenient, it eats away at a man's confidence, his sense of control, his very identity as strong and capable. The truth is, a weak or slow stream is one of the clearest signs that your prostate is pressing against the urethra, narrowing the pathway where urine should flow freely. When you were younger, your bladder could empty with force and confidence. But as the prostate swells, that once wide-open passage becomes like a kink in a garden hose. The pressure builds, the flow weakens, and suddenly the simple act of urinating feels like a test of patience and endurance. It's more than just an annoyance. That strain puts pressure on your bladder, your kidneys, and your emotional well-being. I remember a man named Harold, 68 years old, who told me he used to pride himself on never wasting time. He was quick, efficient, always on the go, but then his urine stream slowed. He said, "Doc, I feel like my body is holding me hostage in my own bathroom." He would get so frustrated standing there that he began to dread going at all. When we finally addressed his prostate, the change in his voice and energy was remarkable. He said it wasn't just about urination, it was about feeling like himself again, no longer trapped by something so basic. Gentlemen, I want you to think about what this means. That weak stream is not a random quirk of aging. It's a message that your prostate is interfering with the most fundamental function of your body. And if you don't listen, the problem only grows worse, leading to even more discomfort, more interruptions, and more loss of dignity. But a weak stream is rarely the only warning. In fact, when urine flow slows, another troubling sign often follows close behind, one that leaves men feeling constantly unsatisfied and unsettled, even after they've just finished in the bathroom, and that's exactly where we're heading next. 3. The feeling of not emptying your bladder. One of the most frustrating experiences men describe to me is finishing at the toilet, walking away, and yet still feeling like something is left behind. They say, "Doc, I just went, but it's like my bladder is never satisfied." That lingering heaviness, that nagging urge, it follows them through the day and especially through the night. And it's not just inconvenient, it becomes a constant reminder that something inside is not working the way it should. I've seen men pace their bedrooms, shake their heads in disbelief, and confess that they sometimes go back to the bathroom 2 or 3 times in a row, only to squeeze out a few drops. That is not simply aging. That is your prostate interfering with one of the most basic rhythms of your body. Here's why it happens. When the prostate enlarges, it squeezes the urethra like a clamp on a pipe. The bladder tries its best to push urine past the obstruction, but no matter how hard it works, a small amount remains trapped inside. Over time, that leftover urine creates pressure, discomfort, and the constant sensation that you need to go again. It's like trying to drain a sink when the pipe is clogged. You think it's empty, but the water never really clears. And this doesn't just wear you down mentally, it puts you at higher risk for infections, bladder damage, and even kidney strain if ignored too long. I recall a gentleman named Samuel, 70 years old, who told me he felt like a prisoner to his own bladder. He would leave the bathroom, sit down to read the paper, and within minutes feel the urge all over again. He admitted it was breaking his spirit. He avoided road trips because he couldn't trust his bladder to cooperate. He turned down invitations with friends because he was embarrassed by how often he excused himself. When we began treating his prostate, the relief in his eyes was unforgettable. He said, "Doc, I finally feel free again." That's the emotional weight of this sign. It robs you of your freedom, your spontaneity, and your peace of mind. Gentlemen, if you constantly feel like you can't empty fully, don't ignore it. It's not just a nuisance. It's your body signaling that your prostate is pushing harder than you realize. And if this pattern continues, The next problem is almost inevitable, one that many men find humiliating because it follows them even after they've left the bathroom. And that's what we need to uncover next. 4. Dribbling or leaking after urination. Many men tell me that the most embarrassing part of their prostate troubles isn't the constant bathroom trips or the weak stream, it's the dribbling afterward. They stand at the toilet, finish, shake off, and zip up, believing they're done. Then, a few minutes later, they feel the dampness in their underwear, or worse, see a small stain spreading on their pants. I've had men sit across from me with their voices low, admitting that they carry tissues in their pockets or wear darker clothes just to hide it. Some even avoid social gatherings for fear of being caught in a humiliating situation. This is more than an inconvenience. It strikes at a man's pride and dignity, making him feel like he no longer has full command over his body. Why does this happen? When the prostate enlarges, it narrows the urethra and disrupts the bladder's ability to push urine out with force. Even after you think you're done, small amounts get trapped behind the swollen gland and slowly seep out afterward. Imagine turning off a garden hose, but still seeing drops of water slip through because the nozzle is obstructed. That's exactly what your body is experiencing. Over time, this dribbling isn't just frustrating. It can irritate the skin, increase the risk of infection, and make a man feel constantly unclean. I remember a patient named Charles, 69 years old, who confessed that he had stopped going on walks with his wife because he worried about leaking in public. He told me, "Doc, it's like I've lost control of my own body. I feel like less of a man." When we addressed his prostate issues and the dribbling stopped, his confidence returned almost overnight. His wife later thanked me, saying, "You didn't just help his health, you gave me back my husband." That's the hidden truth about this sign. It doesn't just affect the body, it touches the heart, the marriage, and the spirit. Gentlemen, if you find yourself dealing with dribbling or leakage, don't shrug it off. It isn't something to be ashamed of. It's your body sounding an alarm. And what often follows this symptom is just as disruptive, if not more so. Sudden, powerful urges to urinate that strike without warning and leave you scrambling for the nearest restroom. And that's the next sign we must confront head-on. 5. Sudden urges you can't control, urgency. One of the most distressing experiences I hear about from men is the sudden and overwhelming need to urinate that seems to strike out of nowhere. They'll be sitting at the dinner table, driving to see their grandchildren, or even standing in the grocery store line when suddenly the urge hits with such force that panic sets in. They scramble for the nearest restroom, praying they can make it in time. For some men, these episodes have led to accidents, and the shame that follows is crushing. I've had patients confess that they've stopped leaving the house for long stretches of time, not because they don't want to live their lives, but because they can't trust their bladder to cooperate. That sense of being held hostage by your own body is something no man should have to endure. The reason behind these uncontrollable urges lies in the pressure your enlarged prostate places on the bladder. As the gland swells, it irritates the bladder walls, making them overly sensitive and reactive. Instead of calmly holding urine until it's truly full, the bladder muscles contract suddenly and forcefully, sending an urgent signal to your brain even when only a small amount of urine is present. It's as if your body is constantly crying wolf, demanding that you respond immediately, whether or not it's truly necessary. This constant state of false alarms exhausts not only your bladder, but also your spirit, leaving you anxious and on edge. I remember a patient named Dennis, 74, who shared with me how one of these urges struck while he was at his granddaughter's school play. He made it to the restroom just in time, but he told me he missed her big moment on stage. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Doc, it's not just about my bladder. It's about what I'm losing because of it." His story is not unusual. These sudden urges rob men of confidence, independence, and the simple joys of everyday life. Yet when treated, many men regain control, finding not just relief, but also a renewed sense of freedom. Gentlemen, if you're experiencing these sudden, uncontrollable urges, don't brush them aside. They are a warning that your prostate is agitated and your bladder is under strain. And what often follows this irritation is another symptom that is even harder to ignore: pain or burning during urination, a sign that inflammation has taken hold more deeply than most men realize. And that is exactly where we're headed next. 6. Pain or burning during urination. There is a particular look that crosses a man's face when he describes the pain he feels each time he goes to the bathroom. It's a mixture of frustration, fear, and resignation. Many men tell me, "Doc, it feels like fire every time I urinate," or "It's like my body punishes me for doing something that should be simple and natural." Some try to tough it out, convincing themselves that it will pass, that maybe it's just something they ate or drank. But when that burning lingers day after day, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is not simply a small irritation. It is your body waving a red flag that your prostate is inflamed and your urinary tract is under stress. The burning or stinging sensation often comes from the way an enlarged prostate irritates both the bladder and urethra. As the prostate swells, it alters the flow of urine, sometimes making it more concentrated and acidic. That concentrated urine, combined with the constant pressure and inflammation, creates a perfect storm of discomfort. In some cases, men may even develop infections because the bladder doesn't empty fully, and bacteria thrive in the stagnant urine left behind. Either way, the result is the same. Every trip to the bathroom feels like an ordeal, something to dread rather than a moment of relief. And when you start dreading the most basic bodily function, it chips away at your peace of mind and your quality of life. I think of a man named Lawrence, 66 years old, who came into my office nearly in tears. He had spent weeks dealing with burning urination, convincing himself it would improve on its own. By the time he saw me, he was exhausted from sleepless nights and overwhelmed by worry. He admitted he was terrified it might be cancer. After proper evaluation, we found his pain was linked to severe prostate inflammation, not cancer, and once we began addressing the root cause, his relief was almost immediate. He later told me, "Doc, I didn't realize how much fear I was carrying until it was gone." His story is proof that listening to your body early can save you not only pain, but also unnecessary fear. Gentlemen, if urination brings pain or burning, don't dismiss it as something minor. It's one of the most direct ways your body tells you that your prostate is in distress. And sometimes, when the inflammation is strong enough to cause burning, it also creates another symptom that is far more alarming: seeing blood where it doesn't belong. That is the next sign every man over 60 must understand. 7. Blood in the urine or semen. Few things stop a man in his tracks like seeing blood where it does not belong. I have had patients sit across from me, their hands trembling, describing the shock of looking down into the toilet bowl and seeing red in their urine or noticing streaks of blood in their semen. They say, "Doc, I thought I was fine, but when I saw that, I froze." I didn't know what to think. That fear is real, and it is justified because blood in either urine or semen is never normal. It is a powerful warning sign that something deeper is happening inside the prostate or urinary tract. When the prostate becomes enlarged and inflamed, tiny blood vessels within the gland can rupture under the pressure. This may cause a few drops of blood to mix with urine or semen. Sometimes it's faint, just a pinkish tinge, and other times it can be much more noticeable. Either way, it signals that your prostate is under significant stress. In some cases, infections or stones in the urinary tract can also contribute. And though not every instance points to cancer, it is always serious enough to demand immediate attention. The danger is not just the bleeding itself, but what it represents: the irritation, the inflammation, the silent damage happening beneath the surface. I'll never forget a man named Edward, 71, who came to me after ignoring this symptom for months. He admitted he hoped it would just go away, but every time it appeared, his anxiety grew until finally he broke down and told his wife. By the time he reached my office, he was more afraid of the unknown than of the condition itself. We ran tests and discovered the bleeding was caused by a severely enlarged but non-cancerous prostate. With treatment, the bleeding stopped, and Edward later said, "Doc, I lost months of peace because I didn't face the truth sooner." His story is a reminder that denial only deepens fear, while action brings clarity and healing. Gentlemen, if you ever see blood in your urine or semen, do not brush it aside, do not delay, and do not convince yourself it's nothing. It is your body sounding an alarm, and when that alarm goes off, you must listen. Because if ignored, the same pressure and swelling that cause bleeding will also make the simple act of beginning urination more and more difficult. And that's the next sign every man should recognize before it steals even more control from his daily life. 8. Trouble starting urination. There is a particular frustration that comes when you stand at the toilet, ready to relieve yourself, and nothing happens. Seconds pass. You strain, you wait, and still the stream won't begin. Some men describe it as if their body has forgotten how to cooperate. Others tell me that the longer they wait, the more anxious they become, as if they're stuck in a battle with their own bladder. I've had patients admit they avoid using public restrooms because the delay feels humiliating when others are waiting behind them. This hesitation at the very start of urination may seem small at first, but it is one of the most telling signs that your prostate is interfering with your life. The prostate surrounds the urethra, the narrow tube that carries urine from the bladder out of the body. When the gland swells, it can act like a gatekeeper, closing off the opening just enough to make starting difficult. The bladder may be full, the urge may be strong, but the obstruction creates resistance that you cannot simply will away. Some men push and strain, tightening their muscles, hoping to force the flow, but straining only worsens the pressure, irritating both the bladder and prostate even further. That hesitation, those long silent moments before the stream begins, are your body's way of saying the path is no longer clear. I think of a patient named Martin, 65 years old, who confessed he would sometimes stand in the bathroom for 2 or 3 minutes before a single drop would come out. He said, "Doc, it makes me feel powerless, like I'm not even in control of my own body anymore." That feeling of helplessness is one of the cruelest parts of this sign. It is not just about urination, it is about losing trust in your body, about wondering when it will fail you again. When we treated his prostate condition, Martin told me the first time he urinated without hesitation felt like a victory, as if he had reclaimed a piece of his manhood. Gentlemen, trouble starting urination is not just an inconvenience. It is your prostate placing an obstacle between you and the most basic act of daily living. Ignoring it will only allow that obstacle to grow larger. And once the stream does begin, many men discover another painful truth: that the very same prostate obstruction interfering at the start also affects their ability to perform in the bedroom. And that is the next sign we must discuss with honesty and courage. 9. Erectile dysfunction and loss of sexual confidence. For many men, one of the most painful consequences of prostate problems isn't just the late-night bathroom trips or the weak stream, it's what happens in the bedroom. I've had countless men lower their voices, glance at the floor, and admit, "Doc, I can't perform like I used to." Some tell me they struggle to get an erection at all, while others say they can't maintain one long enough to feel close to their partner. It's not only the physical struggle that weighs them down, but the heavy emotional toll that follows. The shame, the self-doubt, the fear that they're letting down the person they love most. These feelings can erode a man's confidence faster than almost anything else. The connection between an enlarged prostate and erectile dysfunction is stronger than many realize. As the prostate grows, it interferes with blood flow, nerve signaling, and hormone balance, all the systems that must work together for an erection to happen. Add to that the constant fatigue from poor sleep and the stress of worrying about urinary symptoms, and suddenly intimacy becomes something men avoid instead of enjoy. What once brought joy, closeness, and pride is replaced with frustration and silence. The truth is, when prostate health declines, sexual health almost always suffers alongside it. I remember a man named Anthony, 70 years old, who told me he had started making excuses to his wife when she reached for him at night. "Doc," he said, "I felt like less of a husband." I stopped trying because I didn't want to disappoint her. The sadness in his voice was heavy, yet after we treated his prostate condition and worked on restoring his circulation and confidence, his entire demeanor changed. He walked into my office weeks later standing taller, smiling wider, and said, "I feel like myself again." And my wife says she got her husband back. His story is proof that prostate problems don't just affect the body, they touch the heart, the marriage, and the soul. Gentlemen, if you are struggling with erectile dysfunction alongside urinary issues, it's not a coincidence. It's your body's way of telling you that your prostate is at the center of the storm. And while this symptom can feel devastating, it is not the end of the road. But if ignored, the same inflammation and pressure that damage intimacy can also create another constant burden. a dull, persistent ache in the pelvis and lower back that quietly follows you everywhere, and that's the final sign we need to uncover together. 10. Chronic pelvic or lower back discomfort. One of the most overlooked but deeply troubling signs of an enlarging prostate is the persistent ache that settles in the pelvis or lower back. Many men shrug it off as arthritis, muscle strain, or simply the toll of aging. But when I listen to their stories more closely, the pattern is unmistakable. They describe a dull heaviness in the lower abdomen, an ache in the hips or groin, or a nagging pressure in the back that never fully goes away. Some men tell me it feels like carrying a hidden weight all day, something that drains their energy and makes even simple tasks feel harder. This kind of discomfort isn't random. It is your prostate quietly inflamed, radiating stress into the surrounding tissues. The prostate sits deep in the pelvis, closely tied to the muscles, nerves, and blood vessels in that region. When it enlarges, it doesn't just press on the bladder and urethra, it also creates tension throughout the pelvic floor. That tension can trigger pain that spreads into the hips, thighs, and lower back. For some men, the discomfort is mild but constant, like background noise they can't escape. For others, it flares during long periods of sitting after physical activity or late at night when the body should be at rest. Either way, the ache wears on the body and the mind, creating frustration and fatigue. I think of a patient named Gerald, 69 years old, who came to me after months of living with this kind of pain. He told me, "Doc, I thought it was just old age, but the more I ignored it, the worse it got. I couldn't sit through church, I couldn't enjoy time with my grandkids, and I felt like my body was betraying me." After we treated his prostate condition, the discomfort eased and his spirit lifted. He walked into my office weeks later with a smile I hadn't seen before and said, "I feel lighter, freer, like I can finally breathe again." His story reminds us that prostate pain isn't just physical, it steals joy, connection, and quality of life. Gentlemen, chronic pelvic or back discomfort is not something to dismiss. It is a signal, clear and urgent, that your prostate is under strain. And here's the truth. When we put together all the signs, waking at night, weak stream, urgency, pain, bleeding, erectile struggles, and this persistent ache, they form a story your body is desperate for you to hear. And that story leads us straight into the conclusion, where I will show you how to take back control, protect your prostate, and reclaim the strength and vitality you deserve. Conclusion: you are not broken, you are being warned. Gentlemen, we have walked together through 10 of the most common and most troubling signs that your prostate is growing and calling for your attention. Waking up multiple times at night, struggling with a weak or slow stream, feeling like your bladder never empties, dealing with dribbling afterward, or facing sudden urges that take you by surprise. Each of these robs you of rest, comfort, and confidence. Add to that the pain or burning during urination, the shock of seeing blood in your urine or semen, the difficulty of even starting to go, the heartbreak of erectile dysfunction, and the relentless ache in your pelvis or lower back, and you can see how powerfully the prostate can influence every part of a man's life. These are not isolated annoyances. They are connected pieces of a larger picture, signals from your body that something is out of balance. I've spent more than 3 decades listening to men share these stories, often whispered in embarrassment or hidden for years behind quiet suffering. I've seen the way these symptoms not only exhaust the body, but weigh heavily on the spirit. Men who once stood tall begin to doubt themselves. Husbands who once felt close to their wives pull away in silence. Grandfathers who long to enjoy their families find themselves too tired, too anxious, or too distracted by the constant need for a bathroom. And yet, I've also seen the incredible transformation that happens when men finally take these warnings seriously. Let me tell you something important. You are not broken. You are not weak. What you are experiencing is not simply old age. It is your body's way of raising a hand, of asking you to pay attention. And once you do, everything can begin to change. I've watched men who thought their best days were behind them rediscover strength, energy, and intimacy they believed was lost forever. I've seen the relief in their eyes when they sleep through the night for the first time in years. I've heard the joy in their voices when they tell me they can sit through a movie, enjoy a family dinner, or hold their spouse's hand without fear of interruption. Each of the 10 signs we've discussed, whether it's the urgency, the dribbling, the weak stream, or the pain, is your prostate's way of speaking to you. Together, they form a message that is too important to ignore. Your health matters, and change is possible. The sooner you listen, the sooner you can act, and the sooner you can reclaim the life you deserve. So I leave you with this. Don't wait for things to get worse. Don't wait until you're waking up 5 times a night, or until intimacy fades, or until the pain becomes unbearable. You have the power to take action now. Start with awareness. Speak with your doctor. Make small but steady changes. Your prostate is listening, your body is waiting, and your future is still yours to shape. And in the next step, I will share with you a simple but powerful nightly ritual, just 15 seconds, that has helped countless men calm their prostates, sleep peacefully, and wake up feeling whole again. Stay with me, because this is where hope begins to turn into action.